In 2020, Netflix released a 4-part documentary series that would expose one of the most disturbing cases of wealth, power, and sexual exploitation in modern history. Giuffre Epstein, Filthy Rich, tells the stories of survivors who were brave enough to speak out against a system that protected their abuser for decades. Episode 1, titled Hunting Grounds, reveals how Giuffre Epstein operated what investigators called a molestation pyramid scheme from his Palm Beach mansion. Survivors recount how they were recruited, often as teenagers, under the pretense of giving massages for money. What started as seemingly legitimate work quickly became something far more sinister. The documentary exposes how Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell created a self-perpetuating system of abuse. Young girls, many from underprivileged backgrounds, were paid to recruit their friends. Detective Giuffre testified that approximately 30 women spoke to him about performing massage work at Epstein's home, with most being under 18 and only 2 having any actual massage experience. Among the most prominent survivors is Virginia Giuffre, who was working at Mar-a-Lago when she met Ghislaine Maxwell in 1999. Maxwell recruited her to give massages to Epstein, but what followed was years of sexual abuse and trafficking. Giuffre's testimony would prove crucial in exposing the international scope of Epstein's crimes, including allegations involving Prince Andrew. Episode 2, Follow the Money, investigates the mystery of Epstein's wealth. The documentary reveals his connections to Ponzi scheme operator Steven Hoffenberg, who admits they were running a criminal enterprise together. It explores Epstein's relationship with billionaire Les Wexner and how he used his vast fortune to evade accountability, hiring teams of high-powered attorneys and private investigators to intimidate victims. Perhaps the most shocking revelation is the unprecedented 2008 plea deal negotiated by then U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta. Despite evidence of widespread abuse involving dozens of victims, Epstein was allowed to plead guilty to just 2 state charges. He served only 13 months in county jail with work release privileges, effectively shutting down the federal investigation and protecting his co-conspirators. Episode 3, The Island, takes viewers to Epstein's private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, known locally as Pedophile Island. Survivors like Sarah Ransom describe being trapped on the 72-acre island, where some of the most horrific abuse occurred. The isolation made escape impossible, and survivors detail feeling completely powerless against Epstein's control. Central to Epstein's operation was Ghislaine Maxwell, daughter of media mogul Robert Maxwell. Survivors describe her as the lady of the house, who managed Epstein's properties and actively participated in recruiting and grooming young girls. She would approach vulnerable teenagers, gaining their trust before delivering them to Epstein. In 2022, Maxwell was convicted of sex trafficking and sentenced to 20 years in prison. The final episode, Finding Their Voice, chronicles Epstein's 2019 arrest on federal sex trafficking charges in New York. After years of investigations by journalists, particularly the Miami Herald's Julie Brown, federal prosecutors finally took action. Survivors were given the opportunity to testify and confront their abuser in court. However, Epstein's death by suicide in federal custody denied them full justice and left many questions unanswered. Among the earliest victims were sisters Maria and Annie Farmer. Maria worked for Epstein and was the first known victim to report his crimes to the FBI in 1996. Annie was just 16 when she was lured to Epstein's Zorro Ranch in New Mexico under the pretense of an educational program. Their courage in coming forward, despite being ignored for years, helped pave the way for other survivors to speak out. The documentary features testimonies from multiple other survivors. Shantae Davies, who was taken on international trips including to Africa with Bill Clinton. Sarah Ransom, who was held on Epstein's island and attempted to escape by swimming. Courtney Wild, who was recruited at 14 and later coerced into recruiting other girls. And Shauna Rivera, whose powerful testimony helped expose the trauma inflicted by Epstein's abuse. The series reveals how Epstein surrounded himself with powerful figures from politics, business, and royalty. While not all were necessarily involved in criminal activity, their associations provided Epstein with protection and legitimacy. The documentary shows how this network of wealth and influence allowed Epstein to operate with impunity for decades, even after credible allegations emerged. Following Epstein's death, the fight for justice continued. Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested and convicted, though many co-conspirators remain unnamed. A victims' compensation fund was established, and civil lawsuits continue. Survivors and advocates continue calling for the release of all documents related to the case, seeking full transparency about those who enabled Epstein's crimes. Giuffre Epstein, Filthy Rich, serves as more than just a documentary. It's a testament to the courage of survivors who refuse to be silenced. Their voices have exposed how wealth and power can corrupt justice, but also shown that truth ultimately prevails. The series reminds us that justice delayed is not justice denied, and that we must continue fighting for accountability and transparency to prevent such systemic abuse from happening again.